Happy Tuesday, everybody. This is the Longhorn Confidential for October 14th. I'm Danny Davis, the Austin American-Statesman, joined today by Cedric Golden, Thomas Jones. How you fellas doing today?
Good.
Awesome.
Ready for Kentucky.
Let's go.
Yeah, it was also doing pretty good, the Texas Longhorns. So we were talking last week. Things were a little bit dire over on the 48 acres, but this past weekend at the Cotton Bowl, Texas was able to turn a Florida fallout and prevent it from becoming a free fall. A 23-6 win over number 6 Oklahoma in the Red River Rivalry game. Arch Manning looked fine. Defense looked great. We're just going to jump right into it. Thomas, we'll start with you. What is one thing that you kind of stood out to you in UT's win over Oklahoma? Texas is now 4-2, 1-1 in SEC play, back in the AP poll after dropping out the week prior to that. What's one thing that stood out to you?
Just that offensive line is finding a little cohesiveness. You know, they're really getting better, and they worked well together. The kid at left guard, Nick Brooks, a true freshman, is playing really well, and he's kind of solidified that group a little bit. And I just think, 4 new starters, we all know that. And, we're 6 weeks into the season now, 6 games in, and they're starting to play together. And that's really helping the offense, and it's helping Sark figure out what that offense does well. And him and the offensive line are meshing pretty good right now, I think.
What stood out from you from our new and improved, I don't know if it's improved, but our new press box at the Cotton Bowl, brand new digs up there on the state fairgrounds?
I don't like the view, but I like the room a lot. Daniel, kudos to the Cotton Bowl. I know you got to sell those seats in the middle of the field for suites. I get that, but you took care of us on the seats. Yeah, I like it. From my view, I saw a more physical defense get after the opponent. That's what we've been accustomed to seeing. That's what made Florida such an interesting trip, is that the one part of the team that we could depend on to be consistent didn't show up in Gainesville, and they showed up big time in Dallas. And that's what they're going to need for the rest of this season, is that defense to continue to make touchdowns a rarity against the competition. So that's going to take a lot of pressure off Arch Manning and company.
We've been kind of waiting all season. This kind of goes off of what Thomas was saying, but we kind of been waiting all season to see Texas kind of establish something on the ground. This is a Steve Sarkisian offense that, even though Steve was an All-American quarterback, he loves to run the football, often talks about his 1,000-yard streak. Only once in his coaching career has he not had a 1,000-yard rush, and that was the season he got fired at USC. So that's kind of an asterisk.
About to be twice.
What was that?
It's about to be twice, more than likely.
It's about to be twice. I don't think they're getting to 1,000 yards this season. But against Oklahoma, Contravian Wisner almost hit 100 yards. Which 22 times, 94 yards, was factored in the passing games. Had a couple nice catches on a really big drive at the beginning of the first half. And so, when you have a healthy Trey, at some point you figure CJ Baxter is going to be back. This offensive line is starting to, mold a little bit, and maybe some of these younger guys behind the 2 big dogs, grow up a little bit. That's going to take so much pressure off Arch. It's going to take so much pressure off this, passing attack. And Texas is going to be able to get back to doing what Texas does best, and that's run the football. And, Texas was able to do that against Oklahoma. Still looking for that first 100-yard performance this season. But, for once, that running game was a factor, because it definitely had not been the prior weeks. I think, Trey had 80 yards against Ohio State in the opener, and that had been their season high performance. And for this offense, that's just not get the job done. So it was good to see them kind of start to get something going on the ground, and we'll see if that is the case going forward. Speaking of the guys behind Contrarian Wisner, maybe one of those guys is the answer here. But in today's newspaper, I wrote about the freshman class of Texas, the class of 2025, and kind of the impact some of those guys are having on this Texas team. 3 of these true freshmen have played in every one of Texas's games this year. An additional 4 have already burned their redshirt opportunity, so that means they played in more than 4 games. And then there's a couple other guys like Nick Brooks who haven't hit that 4-game mark, but they're starting now, so they're starting to become big role players. But going forward, Seth, we'll start with you. Who is one of these true freshmen, these newcomers on the team, that you need to see more of going forward if Texas is gonna succeed down the stretch?
It's got to be Big Nick Brooks. He's got to continue on this path. He's young. I think he's 18. He's young. He doesn't even know what that body is yet. And he has the look of a Sunday afternoon guy, but he's just getting started. And man, does this line need him. Kurt Flood needs him to grow up. Kyle Flood needs him to grow up really fast on the left side. And Daniel, you asked Sark if he was considering moving Cole Hudson to guard. He goes, "Oh, we considered it." And then he didn't do it because I think he believes in Nick Brooks. And if Nick Brooks can solidify himself, if he can solidify himself up front, I think they're going to be okay. And that's right. Is he playing left or right? I'm tripping.
He's left.
He's left, right. If he can solidify himself alongside Trevor Gooseby, that's gonna prove dividends. But he's got to do it quickly. He's got to do it in these next couple of weeks against a Kentucky, against a Mississippi State, where there's ample opportunity to get some confidence in games that Texas can win. So if he can do that by the time they get to Vandy and Georgia, the Longhorns going to be a better football team because they need him right now.
And he's got that youthful exuberance. That's what Sark and some of his guys were talking about yesterday. What DJ Campbell say, hey, he reminds me of me when I was a freshman. Come in with that juice.
Without the penalties, yeah.
DJ, who's your pick? And don't try not to go old school and pick reference an old baseball player like Kurt, like Cedric with Kurt Flood. Let that slip go. But TJ, who do you got?
I don't even know the new baseball players, man. Okay. The pass rush for UT for the Longhorns is starting to pick up. Colin Simmons is waking up. Ethan Burke's been pretty quiet. But if this kid from Texarkana, Lance Jackson, keeps coming on, he's a long, lean, rangy 18-year-old. And what did he have? 2 tackles for loss and 11 snaps against OU. I mean, he's really got a little spark to him. And if he can kind of fill that role that Colin Simmons had last year as a freshman, almost a designated pass rusher, I think that would really add something to the Texas pass rush. And frankly, they need it. Aside from Simmons, Ethan Burke's been pretty quiet. Brad Spence has been up or down, the transfer from Arkansas. Trey Moore, you don't hear a lot from him since he moved to linebacker. They need a little juice on the edge. I think Lance Jackson is going to get a little more playing time moving forward.
We don't need to mention Grayson Littleton in this conversation. We've seen enough from that young man, and he's
a boss.
Star. This
freshman All-American. Freshman All-American.
Yes, sir.
I'll go back to my first answer. I think Texas does not need a star running back out of this class because you have Quintravian Wiseman, you have CJ Baxter. Those guys are going to take 90% of the snaps if everyone's healthy, but it doesn't hurt to have depth. And much to TJ's chagrin, it doesn't look like Jarek Gibson's going to happen.
That's his guy.
Clark is still a year from the Achilles injury, so maybe he's just kind of working himself back. So it seems like James Simon has an opportunity to develop into kind of a change of pace or a guy that can spell those those big guys for a couple reps. It really kind of said something to me that start the second half, Texas had kind of a do or die drive down the field, and James touched the ball 3 times. They were using him during a critical drive. He's not going to be a guy who's going to get 20 carries this year, but if he's someone that Steve and this offensive staff can trust a little bit to, spell Quintravian or CJ or, pick up a yard here or there. I mean, that's pretty big. He's I think that was his 3rd game, the Red River game. So he still has a little while to go before, he's fully trusted, but he seems to be developing. And this Texas team, you can never have too much depth, especially in that backfield, especially if Texas wants to run the ball the way that they want to run it. So I'll pick James Simon with a nod to the receivers. This freshman class receivers, there's 4 of them. None of them have really stood out yet. It's a deep room, so it's kind of hard to say those guys demand more playing time. And Parker Livingston, DeAndre Moore, those guys are playing the way that they've been playing, but depth doesn't hurt. So one of those freshman receivers can kind of step up and be a guy who can get some playing time down the stretch. That would help as well.
I do like J.J. McCutcheon. I think he'll have his moments.
If you did not tell by watching this podcast, Texas is playing at Kentucky this week, which I assume is why TJ is wearing orange and says wearing blue. These guys are actually the guys that are going on the trip this week. I'm going to be staying home and chilling and watching it on ESPN at 6 p.m. on Saturday. So we'll start with we'll start with the guys who are going to be on the ground in Lexington. What's one thing you learned about Kentucky as you start to prep for this trip to the great state of Kentucky?
Well, they've got a familiar face on that team, running back Seth McGowan. He used to play at OU, and then I think he went to one of the New Mexico schools, and now he's found himself in Lexington, and he's off to a tremendous start. He's already run for 431 yards, and he's averaging 5.5 yards a carry, 6'1", 215 with jets. He can run, and so he's priority one for the Longhorns. They think it starts and ends with him, and if they can stop him, they can get after a Kentucky team that struggled to score points over these last few seasons under Coach Stoops.
EJ, what is on your Wildcat scouting report?
I heard they got beaches up in Kentucky. That's why I got this on. Maybe a sandbar in the Ohio River.
Why are you calling women out of their names? Oh, you said beaches. I'm sorry.
Hey, now Texas fans, they remember Cutter Boley from last year.
Yes.
That big, massive freshman that came in and he made some plays against the Longhorns last year. I like this kid. He's a redshirt freshman. I guess he redshirted last year, even though we saw him in Austin. Big boy, 6'5", 225. I mean, how can you not like a guy named Cutter Boley from Kentucky? And in their last game, remember, Kentucky had a bye this week, but in their last game, he threw for 225 yards, a pair of touchdowns against Georgia. Now, the Wildcats lost, but he played well. And it seems like they've settled on Cutter as their quarterback. And if he improves in this bye week like a lot of freshmen, a lot of young guys do, he could cause some problems. He can move around, big kid, big arm. Let's see what happens.
Maybe Kirby should have used one of those timeouts like in that Kentucky game to
Jeter. This is clapping, Daniel. This is universal language in every sport ever imagined. That's a timeout, especially when you're running toward an official doing it. You're a cheater, Kirby. Own it.
We'll have to remember that when we're in Athens in a few weeks. But
Mark Stoops would never, y'all, never.
Texas has never actually been to Lexington before. This is going to be the first ever trip to the the campus, Kroger Field. They've never played an away game. I've only played them twice, and both those games were in Austin. But as long as that hiatus has been, I guess, from Kentucky, Kentucky's been away from their field for almost as long. They haven't played a home game in 35 days, which Texas fans obviously know since they're kind of going through a lengthy stretch away from DKR right now. 42 days between the Sam Houston game and the Vanderbilt game in a few weeks. But Kentucky's been all right at home, a lot better at home. They're 2-3 of the season, 0-3 in conference play. They're 2-1 at home, and their one loss was their best conference game so far, a 7-point loss to Ole Miss. So they played a little bit better at home than they have on the road. So that'll be interesting to see how they play when they get back kind of comfortable on their own home campus and see if they can put a scare into this Texas team, them having a bye, them having some time to rest up. We mentioned Seth McGowan earlier. He's actually left that Georgia game with an injury, so I gave him an extra week to rest up and them all get healthy and all that fun. So they're better at home than they are on the road, and they have not been very good at the road. So we'll see what happens this weekend at Kroger Field, 6 p.m. ESPN. If you're watching at home, like I will be, Thomas and Seth will be at the field. Hopefully they'll not be wearing what they're currently wearing. They'll switch it up a little bit.
Bringing out the blue, big dog. I'm bringing out my.
Get some green or something.
Long live Joe B. Hall and Goose Given.
Red or something a little bit more not non-biased to the colors. But that's going to do it for us. We'll have plenty of stuff throughout the week on statesman.com. Obviously, all of our coverage from the three of us, as well as David Eckert. Basketball season's starting to get going. SEC, they call it the SEC tip-off, not SEC Media Days. That's actually going on today. Texas goes today, the men and the women, so we'll have coverage of that. Said when Kirk will be here later this week for the On Second Thought podcast. Said, do you have a teaser for that, or are you still figuring that one out?
Still figuring it out. We had a nice fat big dog from ESPN lined up, but he can only do nighttime. And Kirk has to be in bed before 8, so we can't do a nighttime one. But we'll get a Longhorn legend. I always got one in the bullpen. Check it out on Thursday.
We'll be back later in the week. I think we're actually going to have 2 Longhorn Confidentials later in the week. Interviews with some Kentucky beat writers, have 2 lined up for there. So we'll have plenty of Wildcat intel for y'all if you want to learn more than what we presented on this podcast. And we also have newsletters. The Hook'em newsletter runs every day. Seth's Corner runs on Tuesdays. I was actually reading it before I jumped on the pod. It was delivered right to my inbox. So we had some interesting Arch Manning nuggets. If you wanted to jump on that, you can subscribe to that. Find that on the Statesman website. But we appreciate y'all watching us on YouTube or on the website, listening to us wherever you get your podcast. We'll see y'all in Kentucky. And if we don't, we'll see you here next week. Deuces.